All righty, welcome back from the episode of Two Plane Sports. Today is Monday, February 27th, and this is the week. We've got an upcoming recruiting weekend finally. It seems like February took a long time as far as the recruiting world. It was pretty dead considering there was only one signing for the actual signing day. So not a whole lot's been going on. And so now we can finally turn the page into March here pretty soon, middle of this week, and talk about some big recruiting weekends. So OU is hosting their junior days on March 4th and 5th. They're attracting players from all over the country, all the way from unranked players that have not been offered, all the way up to 5-stars that OU's competing with, all the big dogs in the country for. And we've already talked about Williams Nwaneri on Friday's episode, so that's one of the big time players that will be coming. And we're going to talk about 4 guys that are also attending, and there's going to be probably another video or 2 talking about more players later this week of who's going to be there, what we like about them, and maybe OU's chances on landing some of these players. And hopefully the commitments start rolling here pretty soon. So let's start with the first guy that is going to be attending is TJ Lindsay. He's a 6'4", 275-pound defensive lineman from Bryant, Arkansas, 2024 3-star player. Oklahoma is coming in. He's supposed to be visiting this weekend. Brandon, what's your takeaway on him and your opinions on him?
Yeah, we were watching this tape before we started recording. I'm just telling you guys, it's crazy how well he moves for how big he is. I seem to say that about all these defensive line and offensive line kids that we're recruiting because I just feel like to be 6'5", 275 and move like that is crazy. I feel like these athletes are just getting better and better every time we talk about them. It's scary. Obviously, I hope we get him. I'd be a great addition to the 2 planes. He's all in the backfield making plays on the running backs, quarterbacks, good run stopper. It might be hard to pluck him out of Arkansas's backyard because he's right there. I know the Hogs have offered, but we'll see how it goes. Hopefully, Oklahoma can win out.
Yeah, with TJ, he's really good at stopping the run and shuffling his feet, laterally to make sure that plays don't get behind him. It wouldn't surprise me if he got up to a 4-star range, like fringe 4-star. I think what would really propel him to get up higher in the rankings if he improved his pass rushing. Not that he's bad at it, but there's definitely a lot more guys that really just bull rush and go after the quarterback, and he's pretty disciplined in making sure his eyes never leave the ball. It didn't really look like he got faked out too much. Good tackler. Like Brandon said, he's big, so it wouldn't surprise me if at the next level he moves to the interior of the defensive line because of how big he already is. If they can pack on they're 15, 20 pounds in him by the time he gets to college, and I'm sure he'll probably put on a little bit of weight here going to his senior year. He'll be good enough to potentially start challenging wherever he goes, Oklahoma or any other school, at least challenging the guys ahead of him to up their game because he is disciplined enough where he's not going to let shit just go by. He'll at least put an arm out to slow the guy down. I think he could be a good contributor to whatever school he goes to. You good, bro?
Did you freeze up?
I don't think you can hear us, dude.
Yeah,
Bro,
I can hear you. I saw Brandon. The only person that was frozen up was you talking. I guess
that was
yeah,
weird.
it's my fault. So anyway, we got storms rolling in here in Oklahoma. So talking more about TJ Lindsay, Oklahoma offered in January. So they put their name in the hat somewhat recently, trying to build this relationship. Oklahoma does seem to be pushing for more kids in the state of Arkansas. This has been kind of more of a focus, more regional focus. I know Oklahoma brought in, I forget his name. It was the offensive lineman out of, I think, Fort Smith or somewhere over in there that came to Oklahoma and then eventually transferred out. But there really hasn't been a ton of Arkansas commits from the state of Arkansas recently for Oklahoma. And obviously they were flirting with the guy in the 23 class. It didn't end up panning out because he was committed to Arkansas already. Now they're trying to go back to Arkansas and see what they can do. And this time, not so late. So I'm thinking of the guy, Stacey Wilkins wasn't Stacy Wilkins. He's from Arkansas, wasn't he? That ended up coming to play Oklahoma and then went to like Texas State, maybe. I can't quite remember. But anyway, so Oklahoma's going into Arkansas, going head to head, and like Arkansas is coming into Oklahoma and trying to pull some kids out, which they have. So Oklahoma's trying to return the favor. He plays basketball, and it's hard for me to wrap my mind around that a defensive lineman is playing basketball at 275 pounds.
That's what I'm saying, dude. These athletes are getting
pretty impressive.
Scarier and scarier. It's crazy, but it's cool too. LeBron's like 6'7", 280. He would be like a defensive line size.
Yeah, but the 280 doesn't look the same on him that like it does on these kids nowadays.
Yeah.
Stacy Wilkins, he went to Louisiana Monroe. That's where he ended up transferring out of. But he's originally from Arkansas, I think Conroe or something. But anyway, so moving on to the next guy is Michael Boganowski. I believe that's how you say his
Mike
name.
Wazowski.
Mike Wazowski, yeah. 2024 three-star linebacker out of Junction City, Kansas. So another guy that Oklahoma has identified that's on the lower end as far as the rankings go right now. It kind of reminds me of a kid that he's got great stats and he's a little under-recruited, and someone that I think would show up at Kansas State and be like an all Big 12 player type kid. Jose, what do you think?
It seems like his ranking, like you said, he's underranked, kind of like a Dylan Edwards at this point in the recruiting cycle, even though they're putting up crazy stats. The way he's playing at the high school level is kind of what I think they're going to want Deshaun McCullough to play like at Oklahoma. Because sometimes he'll come from the safety position, come down and stop the run. He plays linebacker pretty often. Very good open field tackler. And then he plays offense too, which shows that he has speed. So he's not a slow guy. Maybe he's just not a burner like they would want maybe a linebacker to be nowadays. I wouldn't say that he's probably going to be a guy that you want to try to cover from sideline to sideline or ask to cover someone from sideline to sideline, but he's not someone that's going to be a liability either. Probably better in the pass game than it would be, trying to cover a running back. But I think he would be a good addition. It's just going to be tough at this point, it's tough to see where these guys could fit because we haven't seen this current team. Once we go into the fall and we have an idea of where holes might be or where improvements are going to be, maybe we can start giving better predictions. But Michael, good player. I do think he's underranked at this point. Wouldn't be surprised if, again, he gets into the 4-star range because of the statistics he's putting up. He just needs to go to probably a few more camps here over the summer as he gets more eyes on him. That ranking will probably start going up.
Michael Wazowski, first of all, great name. In second grade, I actually dressed up as Michael Wazowski for a Halloween costume party. It was electric. So Mike Wazowski, the football player, I'm just going to call him that forever. He reminds me of Phil Pisciotti in the underranking thing. I'm pretty sure Phil Pisciotti, when Oklahoma offered, was a 3-star. He may have climbed to a 4-star at this point. I'm not 100% sure, but Phil Pisciotti lit up the box score, the stat sheet, and so does Mike Wazowski. I think the dude had like 123 tackles, 4 picks, a couple of forced fumbles, fumble recoveries. He played a little offense, so he's all over the field. I agree with you on the underranked thing. He's got good size for a linebacker. There's a lot to like with him. I think there's a lot of Phil Pisciotti comparisons is what I'm drawing. But so obviously, I hope Oklahoma can win out. I think it would be a big get. Great name, great stats. He can play all over the field. Why not?
Something that might also be playing that might play against him is because he does play safety and linebacker. Like it looks like he alternates often enough that people that are making that are ranking these kids don't know exactly where to put him because on 247 he's listed as a linebacker. But I think at the safety position, you might be able to rank him a little bit higher if you just looked at him as a safety that came in and played in the box every so often. So it's interesting. Again, if he does play linebacker at the next level, he'll probably need to pack on maybe 10 pounds, 15 pounds just to be able to get through the entire season. how does that affect his speed? That'll be interesting because, again, he's not a burner, but he's not someone that you would see as a liability.
And Oklahoma is going into the state of Kansas in Brent Venables' backyard and trying to tap maybe into a little bit more of an underrated guy, and someone that could rise in the rankings, staying in that Midwest region and staying within the surrounding area and identifying the talent rather than going out to California or somewhere like that. You've got great talent just a few hours north. So moving on to another kid that is in that Midwest region, is Grant Brix from Logan, Iowa. He's a 2024 four-star offensive tackle, 6'6", 270 pounds. He's got the size already, at least the height. He's probably putting on weight still as we're talking about him, going into his senior year. I'm sure he'll beef up to probably like 280, 285, somewhere in there as he's getting a little bit older. Iowa's offered him, Nebraska's offered him, Penn State's offered him. He's got a total of 21 offers. He's rising up the rankings here pretty recently. I mean, he's got offers from Oregon and Ole Miss in the last few days, Notre Dame. So he's picking up more and more offers every day. And someone that Oklahoma is going to have on campus this upcoming weekend. I think a big target for Coach B. Going into Iowa is tough. It's Iowa and Oklahoma and Alabama produce a lot of great offensive linemen. Not that Alabama's thrown their name in the hat quite yet, but Iowa's got the reputation like Oklahoma does. So it's tough to do that, to use our leverage as Oklahoma like we can against most schools. But I still think the Oklahoma brand is obviously bigger than Iowa. Brandon, what do you think?
I mean, I agree with you. It's going to be tough to pull an Iowan away from the Hawks because they do produce a lot of NFL talent. Brian Bulaga, Tristan Wirfs is out there right now. There's 5 or 6 dudes that I just can't think of right now that have come from Iowa. Really good school for offensive linemen. But I think of all the kids we're going to talk about tonight, is the one I'm most excited about. There's really nothing not to like about this kid. You mentioned his size, 6'7", about 270, moves really well, mauling kids, but he also competes in track. And he wrestles, which I talk about a lot with offensive linemen. It translates so well, just the way he's going to be able to move his body. He's going to be comfortable in all sorts of situations. He's going to have leverage. He's going to understand a lot of things to beat defensive linemen. He's going to be hard to get around. There's that. I think he has like a 3.9 GPA. Like there's really nothing not to like about this kid. He's really smart, 3-sport athlete. Gets after it, but again, it's just going to be tough to pull a kid out of Iowa when the Hawks have offered. But I mean, again, I think this is the one that I would like to see the most in this particular video. I think he would fit really, really well with Coach B. This is the one I want to get the most.
Yeah, tough to go in Iowa, and it's going to be interesting how NIL plays into this recruitment. Thinking back to last year, I think a lot of schools just went all in with how they were going to use NIL and recruiting, including Oklahoma and specifically with Iowa. If you guys remember, we talked about it before just to refresh our memories, but Caden Proctor committed to Iowa forever. He was a 5-star. I think he might have been the number 1 offensive tackle on some websites. And once he decommitted from Iowa and flipped to Alabama, that he was doing an interview and he mentioned that Iowa was going to pay him a lot more to go play for him. And I'm sure that the ranking and how good of a player he is played a factor there, but it wouldn't surprise me if I was going to start paying these big boys, kind of like Texas does, right? Where if you're an offensive lineman, you're at least guaranteed an X amount to play for Iowa. That'll make it a lot harder to go into Iowa and pull offensive linemen or really any player. So we'll see what happens. I do agree he would be huge to add to the offensive line because we're going to have to do a lot of replacing over the next few years. And next year's going to be a pretty new group, but even still, like Tyler Guyton will probably be out after next year. Our center, if probably Andrew Raym, assuming that he's able to come back on time for the season. And if he has a good year, might leave for the draft. I mean, there's going to be plenty of spots opening up here over the next year. Like there is always, seemingly always on the offensive line. So we'll see. He could at least have potential to be in the 2 deep as a freshman because of the size and length that he possesses. And like you mentioned, as a wrestler, knowing how to use his leverage, it's pretty important as an offensive lineman.
Extremely important for that. And, you know, again, a multi-sport athlete is someone that you want on your team. So OU having him on campus, I think, is big, but it's one of those things that I just wonder, you know, being from Iowa, you can go play and be, you know, you can get the exposure that you want, and you can go into the first round if you play well enough at Iowa. Is Iowa and the location just going to be too much to overcome? I'm not sure. I guess it's something we're going to have to definitely be watching as the summer comes in. But at the end of the day, as long as you're getting a visit, I mean, you're throwing your name in the hat. That's all you can ask for. So I'm going to take this time. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify. Everything's linked in the description below, and TikTok. When you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, leave us a review on there. It helps us out a lot. Man, I'm struggling. And then be sure to stay around for Brandon's in a video challenge. We're only getting about one a week right now, but he will be on full time here in the next couple weeks, 2 to 3 weeks.
11 more days, nerds.
11 more days, and you get to leave Space Force, right?
Yes, can't wait.
Yes. All right. So the next guy we're going to be talking about is Jarvarius Green, 5'10", 190-pound wide receiver from Shelby, North Carolina. He's a 2024 3-star kid. He currently doesn't hold an offer from Oklahoma. I feel like, Oklahoma's recruiting him, but Oklahoma must feel pretty good about where they sit with like a Bryant Wesco, Zion Kearney, and there's someone else I am blanking on, but there's probably 2 or 3 receivers that Oklahoma feels really good on, and they haven't quite offered Jarvarius Green. And I will say, I think that Jarvarius Green is extremely talented. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at his stats, but last year he really had a breakout season. 61 catches, 1,267 yards, averaged nearly 21 yards a catch, 18 touchdowns. So a kid that tore up and put up stats all over the place, really emerged last year as a junior. Jose, what do you think?
Big fan of him. Love the stats. As a receiver, at his size, he plays outside and he makes a lot of competitive catches, and he catches with his hands, which is weird to say, but it's really important at this point because a lot of guys when they're going up for a competitive catch 50-50 ball, they might just try to catch with their body, pin it up against their chest, and hope that no one is able to punch it out. He's got strong enough hands and confidence in his ability to stay in bounds. Goes up, high points the ball really well. He's a physical receiver. Again, this is not a guy that's going to be taking the top off a defense just from watching his high school tape. Maybe he's able to get a little bit more speed here over the next year or so, or he does have that in his game. But he's shifty, able to get through tackles, fights through contact. A guy that would definitely add a different element, not just being, a speedster that's going to run by people.
Yeah, he's different than a lot of the receivers I feel like we've talked about recently in terms of recruiting wise, just because he is, I don't want to say small, but he's smaller than what we've been talking about. He's only 5'10", 190. It feels like we've been talking about dudes 6'2", 6'3", and up. But like Jose, he makes very competitive catches with his hands. He's physical. Obviously, those stats are crazy. 21 yards a catch, 18 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards on 60-something catches. Very productive player. I think he would add a lot to the offense. But I talked about with Grant Brix being the one I'd like the most. This is the one that I'm kind of the least worried about. Obviously, I would like to see Oklahoma land him, but I just think receivers are, I don't want to say easy to get, but I feel like we're always going to be stacked at receiver. I think he would bring a lot to the table, but I'm not overly stressing this recruitment yet, I guess.
And at the end of the day, Emmett Jones, it seems like he has hit the ground running, whether it's with him or Wesco or Kearney or anyone else. It seems like a lot of kids are gravitating towards him, are interested in Oklahoma, want to play at Oklahoma. So it seems like we finally have our guy. Not that Washington wasn't that, but he didn't have the title. But it really seems like Jones is what was advertised, and not that he's landed a commitment yet. I mean, there's been 0 commitments in the 24 class so far, unfortunately. But it seems like he's building some momentum, some positive momentum, and hopefully that results in a commitment from someone here in the next 2 months.
Then Jarvarius Green Ellis.
Jarvarius Green Ellis, yes.
Do you remember Ben Jarvis Green Ellis?
In the name sounds familiar, but I don't remember.
He was a Pat, wasn't he? I used to hate that guy.
He was
Jarvis Green Ellis.
Yeah, he was a Pat, and then he went to play at Cincinnati. I know those were his 2 big spots. He might have been a Steeler at one point too. I can't remember.
He was average at best, but he played for the Pats, so I didn't like him.
Yeah, of course.
Jarvarius Green has a similar name. It's the only reason I thought of him.
He does.
Just without the Ben and the Ellis.
I wouldn't go off script real quick here, boys, because I completely forgot about it until like 2 seconds ago. David Stone is visiting Texas A&M next weekend while Oklahoma's having their event. He'll be in College Station. Do you think that is concerning at all? I mean, I know he's in Oklahoma all the time, but you would assume that he would at least the Sooners would try to get him on campus this month. I know there's another event, but this is kind of the 2024 event because the end of the month seems to be a lot of 2025 and younger guys.
I don't know. I think it's more just annoying. I still think it's a 2-team race, and I still think Oklahoma's in the lead. But, I mean, I'd like for all these other nerds to just back off, but just keep recruiting him too. But, I mean, I still think unless something changes drastically, I still think Oklahoma's the leader, but I still think it's a two-horse race. Just annoying that Texas A&M is doing it. And also, why Texas A&M needs to screw off anyway. They have 307 5-star defensive linemen in the 22, 23 classes. These kids are all going to be able to play there. We talk about all the time. They're going to have a huge amount of decommitments in the coming years at that position to positions along the defensive line.
I can't say I'm not stressed because, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we've seen what has happened when Oklahoma goes head-to-head with defensive linemen, against Texas Tech. I can't sit here and act like that's not a threat. Obviously, what they're selling, defensive linemen are buying or are receiving, I guess, big digits. So I don't think he'll end up at Texas A&M. But you get down there, and what happens? He has a great experience, and he sees the dollar signs, and he's like, "Yeah, I mean, whatever, I'm coming." And or they start really putting their name in the hat for him. So I mean, it's never great, but I mean, he's on campus at Oklahoma, in Norman all the time. We just don't know about him all the time. But it would be nice to see him at one of the main events. I understand if you're showing up on campus to go see your sister, but at the end of the day, I'd like you to be at a handful of these main recruiting events. There's a reason why they're put on. There's an experience.
That's my thought. Like, it's the fact that it's during the same weekend as Oklahoma's recruiting event, and who knows, maybe it's just like the staff is. I know it's been reported that he's tried to commit multiple times to Oklahoma, and people close to him are kind of wanting him to not be in the state of Oklahoma for whatever reason, but it just makes it so that there's more players in this. Oklahoma at one point was like, it literally was no question that he was going to be a Sooner, and now he might go play at Michigan State for Mel Tucker. And it's not like you said, Brum, him going to A&M might not be concerning as much as it has been with other defensive lineman recruitments where we battle them, but it just adds an extra school in the mix where it could go away from Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, it's really frustrating, but hopefully we can at least get him on campus for either later in March or the spring game. If he's not on campus before the spring game or after the spring game, That's when I'm going to start to be a little concerned, is if he doesn't make either one of those recruiting weekends, because it's like, man, I don't know. I just want you at one.
And I'm still seeing like recruiting insiders are confident in like him being a Sooner no matter what when it comes to signing that piece of paper in December. But yeah, like if you can't get him on, I would even say just buy it. If you can't get him to be on campus again for a recruiting event for the spring game, it's kind of seeming like it's going away from. At least the odds are not as high as they were 4 months ago in him wearing crimson and cream.
I just feel like Oklahoma has to feel good about themselves because, like Brum mentioned, he's on campus all the time. It's just like it's not official, or it's not, you don't see it on Twitter or stuff, but Oklahoma knows him. He's there all the time. They have to have conversations all the time. I feel like internally they're feeling really, really good, and we just don't get to see it on, the Bird app or stuff. But I think internally the program probably feels really good just with how often they get to see him, how often he lives he's here all the time. I feel like for some reason that the school probably internally feels pretty good.
Oh, I'm sure they feel good. I just, it's more of maybe it's the outside looking in because we don't know exactly what's going on. And it's, you would like him to be there to be, a peer-to-peer recruiter as well. At the end of the day, Oklahoma's in a great spot for him. When you really step back and look at it, Nigel Smith's in a great spot. Williams Nowhere, you're in a great spot. I mean, this 2024 defensive lineman class, you're not going to land everyone. You're bound to lose a handful of these elite players, but you're bound to land a handful of these elite players as well. I mean, you can't go 5 for 5 on 4 and 5 stars along with defensive linemen year in, year out. I mean, unless you're Texas A&M and there's other benefits, but then you have kids that transfer out. So, I mean, you have to have realistic expectations. But if David Stone isn't secured in this recruiting cycle, we got issues.
Yeah, I think that people start to hit the panic button on Todd Bates, I think, if we don't land David Stone.
Yeah. But even if Oklahoma doesn't land David Stone, then they land Williams Nowhere and Nigel Smith. I don't think I would be totally upset or, I mean, that's elite.
I agree. I think at this point it would just be the optics. Like this guy was kind of the surefire defensive lineman, and we just got lucky enough that he is as talented as he is, and then he goes to anywhere but Oklahoma.
Yeah. So anyway, moving on to some other Oklahoma sports. We'll start with softball. They played on Sunday against the number 1 team, UCLA, and Oklahoma's number 2. Oklahoma beat them in a run rule 14-0. Oklahoma seems like they've had a few shaky games, and obviously they've dropped a game. There's a little bit of a, getting past the championship last year, new team, losing arguably, and I think the best, college softball player ever in Alo, replacing that production. It seems like this team is starting to gel. And, after, what are they, a dozen games in, 13 games in, somewhere in there, it seems like they've really turned the tide and are really ready to play. I mean, 14-0 against UCLA, that's nothing to scoff at. Brandon, you have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, exactly that. The bats looked fine for all those on Twitter freaking out about the bats because they weren't putting up these buku numbers that we're used to. They did it yesterday. We talked about after they dropped, the game to Baylor. There's no need to hit the panic button on the softball team, and they just showed it yesterday. Just absolutely destroying the number 1 team in the land, which I think is, that's obviously going to change now. I think the team took it personally, being ranked number 2 for the first time in forever, it feels like. They show that they're not the number 2 team in the land. They're going to be just as good as they've been the past couple of years. There's no reason to believe that they won't win it again this year.
And they probably also took it a little bit more personal because wasn't it UCLA's head coach that before the season started said they're not going to be the heavy hitters that they were last year or something to that effect? I can't remember the exact quote, but pretty sure it was someone on UCLA staff that said they're not as scary offensively as they were last year because Jocelyn Allo is not on the team anymore.
They're fine.
Little did they, I was going to say, little did they know what was coming for them. So, no, it's great. I mean, we are extremely dominant, and this is what I hope Oklahoma football turns into here in the near future. But but
Maybe
So,
hire Patty to recruit some defensive linemen if it doesn't work out this year.
she probably could get him on campus. So, another sport, OU basketball. As soon as you want to rip your hair out, they decide to show up and went on the road at Iowa State, beat the Cyclones by 11. Can Oklahoma win their last two games, finish 16-15 on the regular season? They've got two ranked opponents coming up on the road at Kansas State on March 1st, the evening of March 1st, and they finish up on March 4th on Saturday against TCU at home. Can Oklahoma win both those games, build momentum into the Big 12 tournament? I think that they could beat TCU. I'm not sure they can go on the road at Manhattan and beat Kansas State. Kansas State's won the last few games, but Oklahoma beat Kansas State. Jose, you have any thoughts? I know you're not a big OU basketball fan this year.
It's not that I'm not a fan, but let's look at it realistically. This team kind of stinks. They don't know how to close out a game, or they get absolutely ran. Luckily, they were able to win this time. For whatever reason, something clicked, and it went their way. Hopefully, they can finish out the season strong. They have 2 games left, right? So maybe they'll just finish on a 3-0 streak. Doubt it, but you can hope.
Hose hates Oklahoma basketball. I like Oklahoma basketball, but he's not wrong. I don't think that they're going to finish out 2-0. I'd like to see it. Why not? It'd be fun if they do it. I think if they get to 16-15 and then, win a couple games in the Big 12 tournament, you never know. They might be able to make the CIB.
Maybe, but
isn't that the one below the NIT? Isn't that the one below the NIT?
There's one below the N.
Yeah, dude.
Jesus.
No, I think Oklahoma's going to make the NIT regardless of how this ends.
The NIT is just not the same. It's not very fun. We beat Mo State in the NIT last year, then we lost to who beat us round 2? We lost round 2 of the NIT, didn't we?
I don't remember.
I really don't remember either.
I don't remember. I don't know. I remember us beating Missouri State, and then after that, I don't remember much.
Yeah, but or who's to say they can't win both these games? Go on a run in the Big 12 tournament? No, I mean not.
I'm to say that shit. I'll be the first one to raise my hand and say that team is unlikely to do that.
The number one hater of OU basketball. Hose.
It's a very old school style of basketball. It's like very team oriented, and most of these guys coming out of high school probably used to being the guy, or at least one of the guys, depending on where they came from. So it's probably kind of an adjustment to get these guys to buy into playing a whole squad and team oriented ball, because you don't really see that anymore.
I just also think Porter has had to pretty much essentially hit the restart button in both of his years of being at the helm, which is obviously it's tough. So it's going to take some time, but I think OU basketball will get back to where we're at least making the tournament soon.
Yeah, I would agree. That's all I've got. Brandon, you have an individual challenge?
Yeah, shout out OU baseball too. I think they won their first series of the early season. They beat Ryder 2 out of 3 this weekend, so that's always fun. And yes, and the video challenge that came to me when we were talking about Michael Boganowski, a 3-star linebacker. I obviously called him Mike Wazowski. The name's too similar. So who is your favorite Monsters, Inc. character? That will be the end of video challenge for this one. I'm curious to see what we got. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Sullys and Mikes, but maybe someone will be different and put like Randall or something, which I don't know why you'd put that. That guy stinks, but you never know.
I don't know. My favorite's Mike. Wazowski's awesome, but
I agree. So, Mike Wazowski's the GOAT.
He is the GOAT. So, Hose, do you have a favorite?
Sully's cool, but I think my favorite one's a guy that has a sock attached to him and then has to get shaved in the middle of the floor.
2319.
2319.
That's what they call it when you get a sock on your stomach. It's a 2319. I don't remember that guy's name, but I do know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, you've made it this far. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Everything's linked in the description below. And we'll catch you guys later this week.